Please subscribe and don't forget to press the bell icon to get notified whenever we upload a new video.
Hi, a very good morning. You're watching Trading Hour on CNBC TV18. I'm Ekta Patra. With me is Prashant Nair, and it's turning out to be a session where we are seeing a little bit of a pullback for the market. So after yesterday's disastrous fall that we saw in a lot of specific stocks, it is some amount of a comeback that we're seeing for the Nifty, so up around 63 odd points, and for the mid-cap index also up close to around 200 odd points. In fact, a bit of an outperformance for the mid-cap index as compared to the Nifty. A lot of stocks in focus, and maybe that list which I had mentioned can come up, something like a Titan, which is up around 2 odd percent, IDBI Bank, which is in focus ahead of news, and even something like Talwalkar's Lifestyle, which is listed today, Dr. Reddy's Labs. But I also want to point out Tech Mahindra, because that stock was the top loser on the Nifty yesterday, and it continues to bleed into today's trading session. So down 2.5 odd percent for Tech M, top loser on the Nifty. Hi, Prashant.
Ekta, hi. I mean, so finally we're getting a little bit of a reprieve, a little bit of bounce. And I think if you can put the small cap and mid cap indices as well, they'll tell the story. The fact is, I think for now, you should consider this just a rebound and not very much. Yesterday, same time I was putting out the numbers. The small cap index, actually by yesterday's close, over the last preceding 10 days to yesterday's close, the small cap index had lost almost about 9.5%. Mid cap index had lost about 6.5–7% in just 10 trading sessions. Well, after that kind of those kind of cuts, 1.25, even more, I mean, I would imagine type of gains are entirely understandable, and that is exactly what this is. Overnight also sentiment improved a little bit, so US markets were higher. Oil continued its up move, but didn't see any big step up rise, so as to speak, and elsewhere things were quite absolutely quiet. So let's track the market from where we are. 10,656 or so is where things stand. Mitesh Thakkar is with us. Mitesh, good morning. Good to have you here with us. There'll be those who say, well, the better thing to do is to wait for a little more bounce and then sell again. But would you be brave enough to say that buy the Nifty 60–65 points higher because there might be meaningfully more gains?
Morning, Prashant. I think I'm in the other camp which you mentioned earlier. I think I am on the side of possibly, in case we get close to about 10,680, 690, that would offer a very good risk-reward equation taking a short trade. Yeah, if we start getting past 10,720, 725, which I don't think might happen immediately, then I think we'll change our stance. But for the time being, I believe close to about 10,680, 690 is your selling zone. Even stop about 10,725, and I think there could be some choppiness. You were highlighting that a lot of stocks have fallen; they are quite oversold. They are giving a pullback. The index is doing that. But I think if we don't get past the upper levels, chances are that we should not only retest the yesterday's low, but make a fresh low over the next 1 to 1.5 weeks.
Okay. Mitesh, before we get to your specific stocks, I wanted your thoughts on Tech M.
Yeah, I think, in fact, very surprising fall. I was not expecting this kind of fall from a stock which is clearly showing signs of outperformance. But it's now very close to its important support levels. In fact, it's hit those levels of around 640, 635, which is where the stock had done a lot of consolidation in the month of March. So I think temporarily we might have made a low, or we might just go and make a low near today's low. So I think around these levels it will be a good long trade with a stop below 620. But upsides could be capped. This fall has definitely damaged the structure. I think around around 680, 690, I think the stock will find it very difficult to get past those levels. Okay,
what are your picks, Mitesh?
Yeah. So I have 2 sell calls. In fact, Yes Bank is a conditional sell if it breaks 328 in cash. Go short with a stop at 333.5. Look for declines to about levels of 318. And Havells is a sell with a stop at 539 for targets of 505.
Okay, well, we have a couple of Twitter queries now. So Mitesh, Wellingiri wants advice on which stocks to invest in the recent market correction.
See, I think, if you even look at the price movement and just, understand, I think very clearly, and I've been saying this as much, that the pharma stocks, particularly the top 4 pharma companies, are clearly showing signs of a reversal on the medium to longer term charts. While last 2 weeks, these stocks have been sideways, I think they've not really given up the gains in the falling market. stocks like Sun Pharma, Lupin, Cipla, and Dr. Reddy's will top my list. So I think in case, market goes through further correction, which is what my view is, I think these stocks will keep on outperforming, fall the least. And when the market picks up, I think they'll again start doing the best and make much higher highs than what we have seen in the last 2 weeks. So I think getting into pharma would be definite advice. Rest, I think, it looks like this next 6-8 months, which is basically till the end of the financial year, looks like more of a trading market. So you'll keep getting in and out. When you get reversal from lower levels, you'll buy stocks and sell around the higher level. So I don't think I'll make an investment case for the next few months for most of the stocks, barring these top pharma stocks.
Okay, fair enough. Mitesh, just one more name I wanted your view on before we move on. Tata Motors, we discussed this I think 2 days back, 265. It is exactly at the low point of February of 2016. The only reason 2016. The only reason I mentioned this, that is because that was the low from where we saw this massive move higher. So seems like an important level, but what's your call?
So I think I'm clearly observing the stock closely, given the fact that it's now trading at the levels where I thought the stock will bottom out. It hasn't given a sign of reversal as yet, but it's trying to hold on to these levels. So maybe after a couple of days of consolidation, in case we get some indicators pointing on the upside, we'll be aggressive on the long side. But for the timing, that signal hasn't yet come on the chart. So next few days, we might know if the stock can arrest the decline around these levels. I'll be very happy and then play out for a reversal. I think it might take about 4 or 5 sessions before it starts moving up again.
Okay. All right, Mitesh, we're going to let you go on that note. Thanks very much for joining in and taking us through all of those strategies. We do have Krish Subramaniam joining in from Altamount Capital with some more F&O picks. And Krish, over to you then. What are you recommending?
Yeah, morning, Ekta. I think the rollover that we saw was a bit tepid, and we saw the capitulation of the bulls. But for the June series, I think 10,700 was a very strong support. And though we did breach on an intraday basis, on almost closing basis yesterday, I would still be inclined to believe that probably some upside could be there. So keeping that in mind, I think I recommend a buying of a 10,700 strike call. That's quoting at around 110, 115. Keeping a very modest target of 150, and one could keep a stop loss of 95. And stock specific couple of counters which are now showing some pretty oversold conditions. So at the beginning of the series, so the risk reward actually improves quite a lot, and I'm recommending buying of a 1300 strike call, buying of Larsen and Toubro. Now that's also seen some pretty savage correction. So that's quoting at around 13 to 15 rupees, keeping a modest target of 25. Maybe one could keep a stop loss of 6. And the last one is a buy on a PSU Bank, Bank of Baroda. Now again, the PSU banks have been hammered out of shape, but again, the chart seems to indicate they have reached some pretty visible oversold conditions. So I think I'm recommending a covered call in Bank of Baroda. Here, one could possibly buy the July futures, but also correspondingly sell a 115 strike call. A conservative strategy, sell a 115 strike call as well. That's quoting at around 6 rupees, keeping a target of 123, and maybe one could keep a stop loss of 110.
Okay, thanks very much, Krish, for that. Appreciate you joining in with those trades. 70 points on the Nifty, 10,659 orders where we are at this point in time. We take a very quick break. The first on the show, we are back with more. And of course, I mean, it's time for looking at the commodity markets in a bit more detail as well. Coming right up. Okay, welcome back. So we've got 71 points and building as we speak on the Nifty, 10,660 on the Nifty. 1,600 stocks are higher, about 400 stocks are lower. So this is, I mean, exactly almost opposite of what we've seen yesterday, and in a good way. So let's see how far this goes actually. Bank Nifty is up 0.25%, mid cap index is up about a 1.25% higher. Just a quick just looking at names which are doing very well, and I'm looking at the top gainers across the board with the largest volumes. Mahindra CIE will come up on your screen. It's up about 5%, 258 actually on Mahindra CIE. Look at IDBI, it's actually come off a little bit from the highs, 8.5 higher. We've got a full segment coming up on IDBI in a bit from now. There is that important meeting which is happening, IRDA meeting, which is going to, as Yash pointed out earlier in the day, sign off on some approvals, exemptions which will be required for the LIC IDBI deal to go through. Look at ACC, if you can quickly put the name up. It's up So cement has had a rather decent week, given how the rest of the market has done. It's up 5%. That's a big one. You've got the graphite and HEGs of the world doing well. Edelweiss is up 5%, 288. It's fallen quite a bit, along with other NBFC brokers slash financial names like Motilal, etc. Edelweiss, of course, has fallen a lot less, but that is also recovering. Rain Industries is up about 5%. There's Dredging Corp, Aptech, lots of names, and I'm only listing stock, stuff with lots of volumes at this point in time. Okay, Manisha is here with a roundup of all that is happening in the commodity and currency markets. What's catching the eye, Manisha? Morning.
Hi, morning, Prashant. I can tell you one thing, that a lot of support for the equity markets could be coming in from commodities and currencies as well, starting with the crude oil prices, and we are trading nearly a percentage point lower in the Asian markets. But even with that, when you look at this week, we are up nearly 6% for the US crude oil prices, and the Brent is also inched up by nearly 3%. That, of course, is a weekly move, but when you look at a monthly move, it is anywhere between 16 to 20% of gains that the crude oil prices are putting forth for the month of June as well. Also take a look at the Indian rupee, because we have seen some appreciation come back onto that one from 69 kind of levels yesterday. We have some gains there, but the dollar index is closing this quarter nearly with 5.5 to 6% of gains. So that, of course, has been one major factor that has led to a lot of volatility in many of those commodities and currencies. Moving on, should take a look at the precious metal space, because we have seen constant declines on this. Gold actually is putting in a worst monthly decline for the month of June since November 2016. We have seen nearly 1.5% decline for this week, and the gold prices are down nearly 4% for this month as well. Not so far behind is silver, down 2% for this week and 2.5% down for this month as well. The base metal prices, of course, have been supportive for the equity markets today, where we have seen some bargain buying after a very sharp sell-off in the recent many days. So if you look at the copper prices, we are off those 11-week highs that we saw onto that one. Zinc is seeing some strength. Shanghai lead is trading at a 19-month highs, and that clearly, of course, is the metal movement for this week, where we have seen the ferrous metals do quite well. So steel and iron ore are closing the week positive, but the precious metals and the base metals are still closing the week positive. But the precious metals and the base metals are still closing the week negative, even with the kind of gains that we have seen in the day coming in today. Prathamesh Malia now joins us with his strategies on that same. Prathamesh, hi. We're closing the week, we're closing the month and the quarter as well today. And if whichever way you look, many of these commodities, especially metals, are closing all of that on the weaker side. Let's begin with gold and silver. And what is your sense with the kind of sharp declines that we have seen at $50 per ounce? How are you trading it?
Manisha, yes, with almost all the commodities seen declining, I think you can see a little bit of bargain hunting. But just for the near term, I think for the precious metals, we are advising a buy side, and I think 30,600 you'll see again in this counter, which is almost a move of $30 from here on. 1250, as you rightly mentioned, the next move would possibly head towards $1280. In Indian rupee, translates out to be around 300-400 rupees. So in that sense, I would place a bet on gold for a buy side, just to play 200-300 rupees move, but I'm really not bullish on gold for a longer term perspective. But as far as silver goes, I think 40,000 is what immediate near term targets are. I think you should buy at this current market price levels.
Prathamesh, I also want to talk about the metal space, where we have seen the zinc prices decline 4% in this week. But apart from that, the zinc is also closing the quarter, the worst quarter actually since 2015. So with the kind of complete sell-off that we have seen come in for zinc, how do you take the current levels?
Yeah, as far as zinc is concerned, I think it has seen double-digit growth in the past two consecutive years, and this year I think it's not really a year of zinc with inventories on the LME consistently on the increasing side. I think zinc would possibly be on pressure from here on. I think 190 is the near-term immediate targets if you're looking at. So I think I would not be on the buy side as far as zinc as a metal is concerned. I think selling is a better strategy. 190 is the immediate near-term targets that you would look at as far as zinc is concerned.
And one final word on the crude oil prices, because that clearly is the gainer across commodity space, whether it's agro or non-agro in this week, this month, this quarter as well. Are you looking at further gains?
I am a little bit in a dilemmatic scenario as far as crude is concerned, because it has gained very sharply in just few trading sessions, but it gives me a sense that a correction is due on this card. But looking at the trend, I would really not contradict the trend and say I would sell here or buy here. I would just wait and watch. I would just avoid crude for the time being, because just take into consideration the factor that three big nations like Russia, US and Saudi Arabia are pumping in more than 11 million barrels, which makes me say that the shortage that is coming out from Venezuela and Iran would possibly be compensated by these three nations. So I think the scenario of shortage of supplies is something which is not to be seen. I think oil prices will possibly correct.
Okay, all right, Manisha, thanks very much for that. So that's the update coming in on the commodity and currency space. Some news coming in on oxytocin, where the Supreme Court has refused to stay the government order in terms of banning the production of this particular drug by private companies. So that should be something that...
This is, this is the opioid.
Yeah, exactly.
Which, I mean, there's been a huge controversy in the US, but this is, we're talking about in the Indian context.
But it is, for the use of it, I mean, to raise misuse of, you know, raising the output in vegetables and dairy farming. So I think there's been a misuse of the product.
So, I mean, the situation, I mean, in the US, of course, it's been widely abused.
The US is a separate issue entirely for this particular
One of the biggest
thing.
companies which makes this products is a firm called Purdue Pharma, which, by the way, is present, I think it's present in India and most of Asia as well. And that is facing a lot of trouble in the US. But, I mean, you know, it's a product which around the world has faced a fair bit of criticism. And it's kind of
It's a controlled product. I mean, it's because of it's used for extreme pain measures, and you know, when you have obviously a lot of pain with regards to diseases, that's exactly when it's used. But this is in context of a misuse of that particular product. Before we go into break, I just want to point out one particular note on Tech Mahindra which has come out. It came out yesterday. It was a Citi note which pointed out, and remember that they have a sell rating on the stock, but in any case they've said that it's going to be a difficult start to FY19 in terms of revenue as well as EBITDA. So maybe there is some concern which is probably coming in with regards to what FY19 revenue and financials could probably look like for TechM. So that's probably weighing a little bit on that stock. We'll take a break. But up next, Market Technicals, Ashwini Gujral will be with us next.
Okay, 70 points on the Nifty, 10,659 is where we are at, 0.6 higher. Bank Nifty is also picking up a bit more steam, 0.25% higher. Mid cap, of course, the index has been doing better than large caps. It fell a lot more. It's doing a little bit better in the bounce today. We're focusing on two names. One is Dr. Reddy's and the other one is Titan. We've got Ekta and Mangalam to tell us what's happening with both those names. Ekta, over to you first. I mean, I think a US court is extended, I mean, essentially, it's negative news, right? I mean, it was supposed to launch this product. The court is saying, well, you got to wait for 2 weeks.
Well, yes, I'll just give you a background. Suboxone is basically a drug which is used to prevent drug addiction. It's to help people recover from drug addiction in the US. It's a market size of around $750 million, and Dr. Reddy's had received approval from the US FDA. But this particular drug is under litigation with the patent holder, which is Indivior. So Indivior, the second Dr. Reddy's launched the drug, which was at risk because the litigation was ongoing, but they received US FDA approval. They moved in the US courts, saying that, you know, you cannot launch this particular drug based on this particular patent litigation that we have. Now, earlier the US court had put a temporary restraining order on Dr. Reddy's. That means that they could manufacture the drug, but they couldn't sell it in the US till they came to a conclusion with regards to this patent. Dr. Reddy's was supposed to hear from the court yesterday in terms of a decision, but what the court did was just extend the TRO, or the temporary restraining order, for another 2 weeks. So what this means essentially is that it's a potential loss of sales. You could have made money if in case you launched that drug and sold that drug for the next 2 weeks, and that is a potential loss of sales there for Dr. Reddy's, because eventually there will be competition which will come in. And separately, obviously, there's uncertainty on what the court would eventually decide with regards to this particular drug. I also want to point out the flashes. Just want to make a clarification that oxytocin is actually a hormone, and hence there was a concern. oxycotin.
I think it's oxytocin.
Oxytocin is actually a hormone, and that's exactly why there is a misuse of it in vegetable and dairy farming. It's widely debated also that there are hormones which are pumped into vegetables and dairy in order to increase the production.
I mean, I saw the flash, and I guess you've seen what you want to see.
It's separate from the
OXY, TOCN is the hormone, and the COTIN is the opoid. Just to clarify, I mean, since we did say otherwise earlier. Okay, thanks for that, Ekta. Well, Titan is in focus, and this is, of course, after the big bull, Rakesh Jhunjhunwala, has sold some of his holdings in Titan. I think this is the first time ever in the 15 years plus that he's held the stock, that he's actually sold some of his stake in Titan. The stock is up 2.5%, so the reaction is interesting. I guess there is some realization that this would be raising money for other business ventures, at least part of it, and not really expressing a bearish view on the company. But Mangalam is here to tell us what has happened and also how is this being interpreted. Mangalam, over to you.
Absolutely, Prashant, you said it. It is being interpreted positively by the street for a couple of reasons. The first part is that Titan, if you take a look at it, over the last 1 month, it has corrected a goodish bit from the top, and it had underperformed while the other urban consumption peers, the likes of Nestle, Britannia, Jubilant Food, all of them were at the high point of their trading session or trading life. So they were at record highs. Titan, on the other hand, was off about 10 to 15%. And that underperformance was explained by the notice that came in yesterday that Rakesh Jhunjhunwala has sold about 1.25 crore shares, him and his family. The street is taking a look at it in this way. The first part is that while he has sold about 1.4% stake in the company, he still holds 7.5% in the company, him and his family. Secondly, there is nothing wrong with the business essentially. It was just that the valuations that there were, earlier at record highs, the stock was trading at 46 times FY20 earnings, and now after the underperformance, it's trading at around 36, 37 times. In fact, 38 times as we speak. So just watch out for that. The street is looking at valuations. Earlier, we did have a note from Morgan Stanley as well, where they actually downgraded the stock because they said they were reluctant to put multiples going forward or push multiples further. That said, they still believe that this company remains their top pick in the urban discretionary consumption sector. So it was owing to valuations perhaps that there was underperformance and further selling pressure as well. Another way to look at it is that post the selling has abated, maybe, the overhang has gone and now the demand is taking that stock higher.
Okay, yes, absolutely, Mangalam. I think there is just a relief and the overhang that that sale has happened now, and life can go on for Titan now. But need to take a break, but we're going to be discussing technicals. Ashwini Gujral will be with us next. Welcome back. Well, days high for the Nifty, so up 73 odd points, and even the